Back when I went to Cal Poly, I took a fire science class, and I'll never forget the story that my professor told me of the most notorious arsonist of all time, who started over 2,000 fires over a 30-year time span, but was also an unsurprisingly successful arson investigator. So we'll start in 1984, where a hardware store completely burns down in Pasadena, California. And unfortunately, 4 people end up dying in this fire, including a 2-year-old child. When arson investigators come in to check out the scene, they actually just decided it was your average electrical fire, all except one investigator. His name was John Leonard Orr, and he insisted that this fire was arson. He insisted that, of course, because he had been the one who started the fire. And throughout his career, people often did think he was just a little bit too good, and that raised some suspicion. But there was also some suspicion raised in 1987 when there was an Arson Investigators Conference up in Fresno, California. And just after this conference, a bunch of fires started in Bakersfield. Bakersfield is directly between Fresno and Los Angeles. And a lot of these fires just seemed a bit too professional. So this tipped off the fire captain, Marvin Casey, of the Bakersfield department. And he started to suspect that there was an arsonist who was also an arson investigator who lived in Los Angeles. Then in 1989, there's another conference for arson investigators in Pacific Grove, California. And around this same time, a lot of fires start popping up along the California coast. Once again, it's Pacific Grove, California coast, Los Angeles. It's a perfect line. So Casey sees this, and he takes the names from the Fresno conference, and he crosses them against the names from the Pacific Grove conference, and he ends up with 10 names. Of course, on this list is John Leonard Orr. He had also found a fingerprint at one of the scenes of the Bakersfield fires right next to the device that was used to start the fire. It was on a piece of note paper, and he takes this fingerprint and he tries to match it against these 10 names, but interestingly, it doesn't match. Then in 1991, a bunch of fires pop up in Los Angeles, and it creates such a commotion that they create an entire task force to try to figure out who this arsonist is. They find out about some of the work that Casey's been doing and about the fingerprint. So this time they try to match it again, but this time it's a perfect match to John Leonard Orr. So at this point, they pretty much know that it's him, but they don't have enough evidence to convict him. So they put a tracking device on his car, hoping that they'll be able to track him to some of the fires that he's starting. But John Leonard Orr finds this tracking device, but he actually thinks it's a bomb. So he goes rushing to the police station, but the police station is in contact with the task force. So they pretty much just gaslight him and tell him that, oh, it was just a hoax. It's nothing. And then meanwhile, the task force puts another tracking device on his car. This time, they're able to follow him or track him to some of the fires that he's starting. And they basically have the evidence that they need at this point. But then the cherry on top is John Leonard Orr had written a book. And in this book, they match it up perfectly with a lot of the details of the hardware store fire that had happened in 1984. And the main character of this book is a serial arsonist who is also a fireman. So that's all the evidence that they need. They bring it to court, they convict him of first-degree murder, and he's still in prison to this day.